This is CBC Winnipeg News.
Good evening and thanks for joining us. Burnt out and stressed out. That's how some doctors who work for Cancer Care Manitoba are feeling, according to a report obtained by CBC. The findings come from feedback given by physicians who work with the organization. As CBC's Josh Crabb reports, there's concern patient care could be affected.
A report by a Manitoba physicians group is highlighting concerns about a toxic and unsupportive work environment at Cancer Care Manitoba. Doctors Manitoba says it began hearing about issues around 18 months ago from physicians who work with Cancer Care. The group then sent a letter this past September to doctors who work with the Provincial Cancer Authority. 57 of 117 physicians shared their views. Their feedback was put in a report obtained by CBC. Some of the concerns are recruitment and retention challenges, excessive and increasing workloads, and risk this will impact patient care, physician engagement, and workplace culture concerns, including a lack of communication, feedback, engagement, and psychological safety, and a culture of favoritism, with the perception a small group of favored clinicians receive feedback, support, and resources that others do not. In an annual survey, 72% of doctors at Cancer Care who responded said they are distressed. 51% are experiencing a high level of burnout. The report says escalating and unsustainable physician workload concerns is an immediate issue that should be prioritized for physician feedback, given the serious risk to physician burnout and to patient care and outcomes. Cancer Care's chairman, Jeff Chipman, says the board is aware of the Doctors Manitoba report and disagrees with various aspects of it, but Chipman says the board acknowledges the concerns and is fully committed to finding solutions. He says wait times remain within national targets, the turnover amounts to 3 physicians per year, and recruitment is ongoing to fill vacant positions. Jennifer Zyla has been living with metastatic breast cancer for 16 years. She's had the same oncologist the whole time. Zyla says the experience has been positive and she wouldn't expect her doctor to tell her about burnout or stress, but as a patient, she worries about what some physicians are dealing with.
If your doctor doesn't have time to adequately review your materials, their colleagues don't have time to meet, they have their own stresses, their own burnout, then I'm concerned.
In an emailed statement to CBC, Manitoba Health Minister Uzoma Asagwara says they've been in contact with Cancer Care's board to ensure physicians' concerns are being respected. Asagwara says they've been assured the problems will be addressed. Josh Crabb, CBC News, Winnipeg.
It's been a little over a year now since a Winnipeg senior with dementia went missing and still hasn't been found. Earl Moberg's disappearance from his North Kildonan home has since been deemed a critical incident by the Winnipeg Regional Health Authority. And earlier this week, his daughter received the summary and findings of that review. CBC's Gavin Axelrod joins us in studio now with more. Gavin, the family doesn't get an actual copy of the critical incident report, but tell us what the health authority is now recommending after that review.
Well, the WRHA says the critical incident review identified missed opportunities for what Earl Moberg needed when it came to his care. The 81-year-old lived at home and his wife Brenda was his main caregiver. He was also receiving care through the health authority. One recommendation, reviewing adult day programming so people can participate closer to home, which is something Brenda asked for, as well as an additional day. The WRHA acknowledged that and apologized. Earl's daughter Britt says while her dad is presumed dead, she hopes the recommendations will prevent similar incidents.
There were a number of suggestions that came from our family as well, from our experience, and I think that they seem to have incorporated a number of those things.
So home care was one of the things looked at in this review. What did the summary have to say about it, Gavin?
The first day of Earl's scheduled home care was the day he went missing, December 12th, 2023. The family was only notified the day prior, which they say was short notice for Earl and the family's schedule. The WRHA recommends respite protocols be reviewed, noting caregivers need timely and flexible support. Britt says this recommendation is incredibly important.
If my mom had the opportunity to say, this is when I'm working, I'd really like to have somebody to be there at the time when she's away, and also when my dad was more likely to wander and when he was more likely to be confused, that certainly could have been life-saving for my dad.
So earlier today, the WRHA spoke to reporters about this. What did they have to say?
They said they've never had a critical review where someone left their home and wasn't located. They also said every time they do one of these reviews, it's a chance to do better. They say the recommendations are tracked and eventually implemented.
You heard that those recommendations exist in the way that they do because the Moberg family was here for us.
In the meantime, Britt Moberg continues to push for a national silver alert system. She submitted a petition to the federal government for that. She also underscored the fact that her dad still hasn't been found and that her family hopes to one day give him a proper burial. Brittany.
All right, thanks, Gavin. That's CBC's Gavin Axelrod. Winnipeg police are reporting what they're calling alarming numbers following the second week of the annual holiday check stop program. They say there were 35 impaired driving incidents during the week, including one involving a driver who had a 5-year-old child in the back seat. It's upsetting to families who've lost loved ones to drunk drivers and say people still aren't getting the picture. CBC's Zubina Ahmed has more.
Karen Reimer's 24-year-old daughter Jordan was killed by an impaired driver 2 years ago. Tyler Goodman, the man at the wheel, is serving a 6-year prison sentence. They want one of Goodman's passengers, who gave him keys to his vehicle, to face charges as well. She says she's reminded of her daughter whenever she hears of impaired driving incidents.
It immediately just opens the wounds that aren't even really healed.
This is the second week of Winnipeg Police's annual holiday check stop program, and the numbers are twice as high as last year's. Patrol Sergeant Stéphane Fontaine says they stopped 1,018 vehicles and caught 35 impaired drivers.
Some of those included finding impaired drivers intoxicated to the point that they were found passed out at the wheel. But one of them was even more concerning, was that they were found as an impaired driver while driving with the young child in the back.
Tanya Hansen-Pratt is the national president of Mothers Against Drunk Driving, or MAD Canada. She says these check stop results are very similar to what they're hearing from police services across the country.
There's just a disturbing number of people who just aren't getting the message that impaired driving is wrong.
Fontaine asks Winnipeggers to be responsible and consider taking alternative transport options.
Whether that's a taxi, transit, Uber or Lyft, any of the ride-sharing opportunities, or just designate a sober driver.
People that get in the vehicles and the people that facilitate the drunk driving and maybe give too much alcohol or give the keys, it's time to say enough's enough and to extend that culpability.
Meanwhile, Reimer says they'll continue their push for justice in their daughter's death, hoping to stop other families from feeling the same loss. Zubina Ahmed, CBC News, Winnipeg.
It will be a little while longer until a new chief is in place for the Winnipeg Police Service. The police board says it's taking more time to choose a new top cop. Earlier this month, board chair Marcus Chambers said a candidate had been selected and would be made public this month. But today, Chambers says a final decision has not yet been made. Mayor Scott Gillingham, who also sits on the board, says the recruitment process is still underway. The new chief will replace Danny Smythe, who retired in September. Weather specialist Riley Lachuk in now. And Riley, it feels like bitter cold. And I'm sure that some people have forgotten to plug their car in and are going to be waiting for CAA.
Minus 19 as forecast today in Winnipeg, Brittany. A nice sunny sky by the time we got some of that clearing rolling through the overnight hours. But we're starting to see that cloud cover filling back in again. This ahead of an area of low pressure into Saskatchewan and Alberta. Already starting to spread some snow into western Manitoba. Places like Verdun down down through Melita and even into the Turtle Mountains into that snowfall already. And we're expecting this to continue as we get through the overnight hours tonight and into the morning tomorrow across southern Manitoba. We'll talk amounts coming up a little bit later. Tonight, though, in Winnipeg, at least, we're looking at periods of snow. We'll see our temperature at about -22 through the evening, but rising through the overnight period to -19 through the overnight hours. Tonight, -17 by morning. Still a few periods of snow through the morning hours tomorrow. Our winds out of the northeast at 10 through the morning hours tomorrow. Winds stay fairly light tomorrow. Could see the odd gust up to 30 through the afternoon or higher out on the highways. -15 by the time we get to the afternoon, Brittany. We're looking at skies clearing throughout the day tomorrow, and we're looking at temperatures staying cool as we head into the rest of the work week. Those details coming up.
All right, and I'm waiting for our Christmas forecast.
Yes.
All right, thanks, Riley.
You're welcome.
Coming up on the show, we'll meet Photon, the robot dog. While he can certainly entertain a crowd with party tricks, he potentially serves a revolutionary purpose in a way you might not think. We'll find out how after the break. A federal cap on international study permits is being felt here in Manitoba. Assiniboine College in Brandon says it's seen a nearly 80% drop in applications because of it. And it says it's forcing it to cancel some programs as a result. CBC's Zubina Ahmed reports.
Nearly 3 months after the federal government's decision to cap international study permits, 2 educational institutions in Manitoba are reporting a drop in international student applications. Sandeep Rane is the manager of international program at Assiniboine College in Brandon. He says the college, which usually receives close to 1,000 international students every year, is now seeing a 78% decrease in applicants.
The prospective student who's looking to study overseas, it's trying to look at Canada, is doing a double take now and revisiting their decision whether they want to pursue coming to Canada.
Rane says that this decline has also resulted in closing down 5 of their programs. These programs include office skills, baking foundations, culinary arts, business administration, accounting, and finance.
It's not only impacting international students, but it's also impacting domestic students who could have been in those programs, right? Because these are the programs that were surviving with the international enrollment.
Robin Day is the National Director of Academics from Housing College. He says as of December, they have only 5 international students at the Winnipeg campus. He says these students were already enrolled before the new announcement and confirms that they haven't had any more applications.
Career colleges are basically given a quota based on how many career or international students they had in years previous. And because we didn't have any direct applicants, we just had transfers, we were not granted any quota for that.
Rane says the reduction of international students won't only hurt the colleges. He says it will also have a long-term negative impact on the labour market and the province's economy. Zubina Ahmed, CBC News, Winnipeg.
Riley's back in now. And Riley, it's no longer that sloppiness outside when you're walking and slipping from it because everything's frozen up now. But there is more snow in the forecast, so it's going to get slippery again.
Yeah, it's going to get slippery again. Wouldn't put the shovel away yet if you haven't already, because we are expecting a little bit more snow in Winnipeg, certainly more to the west, Brittany. Which could cause some issues on the highways the first thing in the morning across
Use those
south.
Knees. Save your back.
Yeah, exactly.
There's a long winter ahead of us.
Good point. Here's a look at Futurecast, and you can see this area of low pressure as it sits currently over parts of Saskatchewan right now, and that area of snow already stretching down through Regina, through southeastern Saskatchewan into southwestern Manitoba. This will continue to work its way to the east as we get through the overnight hours tonight into the evening. Yes, we'll start to see it spreading a little bit further north as well. So the main brunt of this certainly impacted into the southwestern part of the province, places like the Turtle Mountains, Boissevain, Killarney, Melita and Verdun expecting the most accumulation, but certainly along the Highway 16 corridor, Brandon into Portage la Prairie, into Winnipeg first thing in the morning, expecting some of this snow. Really Winnipeg on the edge of this. So really we're looking at about 2 to 4 centimeters. I'll show you the numbers in a moment for places like Winnipeg and the Red River Valley, but the further north you go, the less we can expect in terms of snowfall through the morning hours. Into the afternoon, we do start to see a little bit of clearing, so some sunny breaks by late afternoon. We don't really clear in earnest until we get overnight into Friday morning, and then we're looking at another system potentially working its way through, bringing some snow overnight Friday into Saturday for Westman again. For Winnipeg, this is more like a dusting. I've got a good chance of flurries first thing in the morning for Winnipeg on Saturday. As I mentioned, most of the accumulation into that southwestern corner of the province, so places like Brandon down through Melita, 10 to 15 centimeters of snow, not out of the question. But as you can see, the further north you go, 2 centimeters in Dauphin, really on the edge of that 2 to 4 in Winnipeg. So more like 2 centimeters overnight, maybe up to 4 the further south you go down Highway 75. This will, though, create some issues with blowing snow on some of the open highways as we get into the morning hours tomorrow for sure across southern Manitoba. Winds do stay fairly light, but we could see some breezes as we get through the morning hours tomorrow. So Yes, expect there to be some blowing snow, maybe some visibility issues, but certainly not looking at winds too terribly strong throughout the day on Thursday. Minus 17, your wake-up temperature in Brandon and Winnipeg. Another cold one into northern Manitoba. Temperatures around minus 25 for Thompson, the Pas, and into Flin Flon. And we keep temperatures below seasonal as we get through the rest of the work week. Minus 18 for Friday, a mix of sun and clouds. Winter beginning on Saturday. A little bit more seasonal, minus 9 with those morning flurries. And Brittany, we're jumping up closer and above, closer to the freezing mark by the time we get to Christmas next week.
All right. Thank you, Riley.
You're welcome.
Well, a dog might be man's best friend. Photon might be a builder's BFF. That's because Photon is revolutionizing the building industry. But what exactly is it? CBC's Jim Agapito visited RRC Polytech to find out more.
Meet Photon, the robot dog. And while he can do some cool tricks and entertain a crowd, he serves a way more important purpose. His skills were on display at RRC Polytech's Building Efficiency Technology Access Center. Research technologist Hamza Mustafa is one of Photon's trainers.
What we're using it for is digital twins. So for instance, when we do an air tightness test for a commercial building, we sit down by the front door, we run the fans, we pressurize, depressurize the building. We tell the dog, go look for a leak. And the dog will walk around, look at the pictures, thermography and acoustic cameras, and tell us, well, there's a leak right there, record it, comes back to us.
And it was just recently used in a hazardous building in Brandon.
We had an old asylum building, the hospital. We were in the attic, and one of the attic spaces was very dusty, very hard to get. So we sent the dog in. And we can navigate from about 200 meters without being near. So we were sitting down in a safe zone, masks on, robots in there getting all dusty and running through stuff.
Mustafa says that's a positive change, considering it's saving time and money and keeping people safe.
The programming for the sensors, for the thermography and stuff, that is projects for students at Red River. So some students at ACE Project Space will be programming those sensors to communicate with the dog to relay that information back to us.
And that has RRC student Camilo Estevan Yarmilo Buccelli excited about the potential Photon can have on building efficiency.
For graduating, they ask us to come up with a final project. This first step will be including one of the accessories into the Photon dog. It will be including a 360 lidar camera that could map buildings from inside and could export 3D models into a computer, a Unity project, or something similar.
It costs RRC $6,000 to buy Photon. And that's pretty cheap, considering how much it would cost the same crew to do the same mapping job. Plus, Photon can carry up to 20 kilos and go up 3 meters a second.
With the dog, we're gonna have an accurate way of modulating and modeling the buildings inside in a 3D version. That way we can locate air leaks as well as acoustic leaks.
So what's the upside to using Photon?
People are getting more interested because they see the potential, but also they see the efficiency that it's providing and the amount of data that it's going to provide. And that is extraordinary because the more data we can feed our computers for helping reduce the amount of energy we use to get to that 2030 mark, it's robotics. It's through AI and machine learning. It's not through just building and retrofitting buildings.
Proof you can teach an old dog new tricks. Jim Agapito, CBC News, Winnipeg.
There's more to come. You're watching CBC Winnipeg News. Stay with us. This week, the loonie dipped below 70 cents US for the first time since the start of the COVID-19 pandemic. Anis Hadari looks at what a weaker dollar means for our economy and our wallets.
Traveling Canadians say a dollar worth 69 cents US isn't nice.
Just sucks. It's become horrible the past year. Killing us. And it's just going down, 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 down.
I do remember one time it was at par, but that was a while ago.
That was more than a decade ago. These days,
well, the dollar is definitely on a tailspin.
Experts say it's about where to expect growth.
It always comes down to the economy. That is the number one biggest driving force of how the dollar moves. So if the expectation is that the US economy and GDP will do better than Canada, money and investment will move there.
And tariff threats from Donald Trump may keep dragging down Canada's dollar.
I actually am worried concerned, I should say, that it is going a bit weaker yet until we get, some relief on the tariff front, or, some better economic news to help support the currency.
After the Federal Reserve cut interest rates in the U.S., Canada's dollar fell even more. A low Canadian dollar can make imports more expensive. Think fruits and vegetables from outside Canada. Though things sold or exported in U.S. dollars can benefit. And for tourism, visitors may get more bang for their U.S. buck.
Those that have U.S. dollars, because this is basically almost free money for them in terms of the increased margin.
Definitely something some Americans notice.
It's great. Clothes, Aritzia's 30% off. It's really good.
As for where the Canadian dollar goes next, there are forecasts it could drop even more to its lowest level in nearly a decade. Anis Hadari, CBC News, Calgary.
Russia says it's made an arrest after one of its top generals was killed in a targeted explosion in Moscow. Russian officials say an Uzbek man has confessed to the attack. Crystal Gamansing has details.
Russian officials are not naming the man, but images of him have been broadcast on Russian state media along with a confession video. CBC does not know when it was recorded or if the man was under duress when giving the statement. The individual appears on camera wearing a black winter coat with his hands cuffed in front of him. Svetlana Pedorenko is the spokesperson for Russia's investigative committee. She says the man was recruited by Ukraine's security service and that he was offered $100,000 US to carry out the deadly attack on Lieutenant General Igor Kirillov, and that he was promised residency in a European country. Kremlin spokesperson Dmitry Peskov says the killing of Kirillov shows that, as he put it, the Kyiv regime doesn't shy away from using terrorist methods. Explosives were attached to an electronic scooter and detonated as the Russian lieutenant general and an aide walked out of an apartment building early Tuesday morning. Both were killed. The strike was carried out in a complex with many high-rise buildings located about 7 kilometers away from the Kremlin. The spokesperson for Russia's foreign ministry said during a press briefing today that Russia will not be intimidated and that all will be confronted and the perpetrators will be found and punished wherever they happen to be. Kirillov was the highest-ranking Russian military officer to be assassinated inside Russia by Ukraine. The attack is set to be raised Friday at a UN Security Council meeting. Crystal Gamansing, CBC News, London.
A CBC News investigation has shed light on the use of social media to inflame tensions between Sikhs and Hindus in Canada. Some members of the Indian diaspora say misinformation is ratcheting up tension in the community. Jonathan Montpetit has more.
Balwinder Singh hosts a local radio show from his basement in Brampton, Ontario. His Punjabi-speaking listeners often call in about Indian politics. And he says he's noticed a recent rise in tensions between Hindus and Sikhs.
I feel unsafe, and many people do.
He thinks misinformation on social media is driving it, especially about the Sikh separatist movement and diaspora.
As if these two communities are separate communities, and people who belong to Hindus, for example, that they should feel endangered by the Sikhs and vice versa.
We examined several hundred posts on X made in November by both critics and supporters of the Khalistan separatist movement. We found that both sides make unverified claims, but posts critical of the Khalistan movement were much more frequently amplified by suspected bot accounts. This post falsely claims Sikhs taking part in a religious event were marching around Surrey, saying they own Canada. The post went viral, boosted by retweets from nearly 500 suspected bot accounts. The misinformation then became the topic of several news stories in India.
Tensions continue in Canada after the recent pro-Khalistani mob attack on Hindu devotees.
Khalistani synthesizers Brinsley has termed Canadians invaders and asked them to leave Canada.
Daniel Boardman is a journalist with the right-wing National Telegraph. He authored the viral post.
Do some bots retweet me? Sure. But I don't think bots are that significant in the outreach they have.
But Singh says he's worried misinformation will drive a wedge between two communities that coexist peacefully in Canada.
I think that is something very dangerous because as we always say that Canada has been known for safety, always.
It's not clear from our analysis who is controlling the bots, but Canada's National Security Committee has said it believes the Indian government uses media manipulation as a form of political meddling. Jonathan Mopetsi, CBC News, Montreal.
We have a remarkable story now from Prince Edward Island about a shark attack victim that lost his leg. But the 27-year-old professional kiteboarder has made an incredible recovery. The CBC's Lisa Shing has his story.
That was ugly. Movement, once effortless, now requires every ounce of strength and concentration.
Doesn't look perfect, but it's come a long way.
Lucas Arsenault, the 27-year-old professional kiteboarder from PEI, traveled the globe, winning competitions until May, when he was attacked by a shark while snorkeling in Turks and Caicos.
And he just latches onto my knee, and I could feel, obviously, he's just ripping skin, and the bite strength is so strong, I could hear bones shatter instantly.
Arsenault got another breath in when it brought him to the surface, and then when it pulled him under for a second time, he saw a chance for survival.
I saw the eyes, and that's what allowed me to get out because I was able to poke his eyeballs.
His family and friends pulled him back on the boat. His girlfriend tried to stop the bleeding using a makeshift tourniquet.
It's almost like your head's just filled with air, like you don't really know what to do.
I'm wondering, like, how is this going to work? Like, I'm dying. Is it any moment? Do I pass out?
None of that happened. Instead, his right leg was amputated. At the time, Arsenault questioned whether he would ever walk again. But with the support of his friends, family, and kiting community and his medical team, he went from a wheelchair to walking with a prosthetic in 10 weeks. And 3 months later, this.
Just gratitude, just happiness.
Is that a normal rate of improvement?
It's exceptional. It's an exceptional story. And then so to observe it, like, I can't say if it's normal or not normal. No one else is kiting with that level of amputation in PEI, maybe even in Canada.
Got the leg going here.
Since then, he's found a new normal. Ways to stay active, particularly key to his recovery. Gratitude.
Pull-ups are nice, yeah, because I'm a few pounds lighter.
And a positive attitude.
If you're gonna face a 1,000-pound tiger shark and you come out as I came out, like you're pretty happy in the end.
And recently, a trip back to Turks and Caicos to make peace and new memories. A fresh start with much more to accomplish. Lisa Shing, CBC News, Mont-Carmel, Prince Edward Island.
The Christmas season is known, in movies at least, as a time for miracles. And one Santa aficionado in Nova Scotia is hoping that's true and that his wish this year comes true. He's being told he has to leave his home, where he's lived for the past 4 years, unless municipal officials relent. Shayna Luck has his story.
Don Johnson's been making Christmas ornaments. He loves the little wood shop attached to his home, a converted garage beside the Sackville River. But he's worried he might lose it. This fall, he and his landlord learned the conversion never had the proper city permit. He has to move out by April, and everything that makes this a home has to be ripped out.
Devastated, absolutely devastated. In the past year and a half, I've put my heart and soul into this place.
The reason is the river. He's learned the city considers his cottage is in a floodplain. Last year, this little river rose in the devastating July floods. Many homes in the area were affected, including this one. Johnson repaired the damage for his cottage and for his neighbors. He's the caretaker for this whole property. And they love him for it.
Neighbors are constantly bringing over food. I'm helping them with things. It is a fantastic neighborhood, it really is.
His landlord says when she bought the property in 2019, she didn't know the permit was missing, and she's fighting to keep her caretaker tenant.
He's great. He acts like a superintendent.
She's applied for a permit, asked the city how to make it right.
It has been arduous, for sure. But I'm just going to see it through to the end.
The city's issued a notice of compliance. Spokespeople said they can't say more because it's an active file. Given the housing crisis in Halifax, Johnson hopes there's some room for compromise.
If I'm willing to take the risk and the landlord's willing to take the responsibility with the housing situation as it is, why not? Why not let me stay here?
If not, this will be his last Christmas here. Shayna Luck, CBC News, Lower Sackville, Nova Scotia.
We have to take another break, but we'll be right back after this. Stay with us. The City of Winnipeg's most expensive construction project has been given a big boost in federal funding. The fall economic statement included $150 million for the North End sewage treatment plant. Cost estimates on the project have risen by hundreds of millions of dollars. Mayor Scott Gillingham has been calling on the federal and provincial governments to help.
That will help us significantly. It doesn't answer all of the questions and it doesn't fully fund the remainder of the North End plant, but it's progress, and I welcome the progress.
The provincial government has promised $30 million to help pay for construction of the second phase of the project. The budget for that phase of the plant recently rose by nearly $500 million. The total project is estimated to cost $3 billion. It's been a little over a month since Angela Lavalley's world as she knew it collapsed. Her 27-year-old son, Kyrell, was in an Edmonton hospital fighting for his life. He'd be found unconscious just hours after he'd been released from a detox center. He'd begged them to go to rehab, but was discharged instead. Kyrell died a few days later after an accidental overdose. Here's part of their story.
Thank you for sharing. I know that your intention is, for other families, so really appreciate you being here today.
Thank you.
It can't be easy to talk about. Obviously, he just passed away November 2nd. How are you doing?
I'm doing well. I lean in a lot to community and ceremony, as well as leaning into the facts that this hasn't stopped with my son. And this is an ongoing pandemic that continues to move in our communities, and that's continuing to take a hold on our children and our people.
Your shirt with Kyrell's name, face on there says, quote, "Come as you are."
Yeah.
Tell me a bit about Kyrell. What was he like? Was that one of the things he would say?
Yeah. So Kyrell, Blue Thunderbird man, the essence of his spirit, he is one of my greatest teachers. My children are my greatest teachers. And to come as you are is something that he has always guided himself with, is being present in the moment.
Tell me a little bit about the stigma along the way that you and that Kyrell came to understand about people who live with addiction.
The big one, I believe, and always believed, was that if somebody walks into an emergency room, that is not the place for them. Or that if a young person who is 20 years old, and this has happened to Kyrell many times, learning how to advocate through the resources, and emergency room would be one of them, that he was using up the resources. And when we think about alcohol addiction, that their heart rate goes way up, and they can go into I can't remember what you call it, but they can go into an alcohol...
Into a state?
Yeah, into a state of where he's even swallowed his tongue before. So the invite to those places were always met with a lot of people who were not so kind to him, as though he felt the energies of people being rude. There were many times if I could not be with him in the space, I would have to get on the phone or be in there in person and advocate to treat him better.
This leads us into, I know, something that you feel is really important to walk through, which is his final days.
Mm-hmm.
So he was in Edmonton, and can you tell us, what happened that led him to be in the hospital in the final moment there, and what that was like?
And I speak to this, even though he was in Edmonton, that this has actually happened to him in Manitoba too. And we know this happens in many places in Canada, where people they're discharged from detox because either their 2 weeks has come up, their body has come down from the symptoms, so they're often told to leave, and even if they don't go right from detox right to treatment, there's an in between.
And he actually asked
to stay. Yeah.
Why would he have asked to stay?
Because he knows his body. He wanted to stay, and he also knew that going back, we wanted to make a plan for him to come back to Manitoba. And he had didn't want to go to the homeless shelters because he knew out there that there was a high risk of him using to comfort his body, that if he was to leave detox, that he would go right back to where he was on the pathway of addiction.
How long was it between when he was discharged, despite saying he didn't
Less than 8 hours
before they found him?
Yeah. So they found him. He was taken into ICU at 6:20. I talked to my son probably about 11:30, and the last message he sent me, because at the time I was teaching, was 1:23 p.m., which would have been whatever time that is in Edmonton, and 6:20 is when he was taken into ICU, and they don't know how long he was.
You write in your piece that ironically you say he finally received the compassionate care he was looking for, in his life when he was dying. What can you share about the care right at the end of his life?
It was exactly everything he's ever wanted. And that, as beautiful as it was and heartbreaking it was, it almost soothed the wound of, knowing that's exactly what my son wanted, was to be treated with such tender and care, respect. The way the nurses talked to him was how I would talk to him.
What would you like to see directly change in the way that we care for people living with addiction?
I think a lot of it is around the narrative and see them beyond what they're using. A huge piece too is there's a huge gap between detox and treatment, and we are losing a lot of people between that. It's not a 9 to 5 pandemic. It's not. Sometimes people want to go to treatment and it's 4 o'clock in the morning. What do we do for them? There are no spaces.
Riley's back now. Riley, we've been talking a lot about the holidays, what people can expect. I'm going to be heading out west to see my family. Will you hold down the fort here? Am I expecting a white Christmas on the West Coast?
Well, do you want a white Christmas?
Just for the day.
Okay.
No,
probably
rainy
not.
Christmas.
At least on the West Coast, anyway.
But here, I think most definitely we're going to be having a white Christmas.
It's certainly guaranteed, I think, at this point in Manitoba. I have a map I want to show you. Here's a look at our snow depth. This is our snow depth model currently across much of the country. So I know, I don't even have to show you this. It's fairly high. They're pretty much guaranteed for all of us in Manitoba, just given that we've seen some snow, we have some more snow to come. That really is across the prairie provinces, a fairly high chance through Alberta, even into southern Alberta, of seeing a white Christmas. But yes, onto the west coast, the south coast, Vancouver Island, looking at a very rainy week ahead, temperatures even close to pushing 10 degrees over the next week. So I think the chance is probably pretty slim in Metro Vancouver, and pretty low chance into the Maritime provinces as well. I mentioned that we do have a fairly good chance of seeing a white Christmas here in Manitoba, pretty much guaranteed at this point, but also adding that we have a snowfall warning for Killarney, the Turtle Mountains, Melita up through Boissevain, right on the edge of Brandon, 10 to 15 centimeters by Wednesday morning. So yeah, more snow to come for Manitoba, for most of us in southern Manitoba anyway, by the time we get into the morning on Thursday. Zoe and Fisher, I think, are ready for a snowy dog walk tomorrow morning. Thanks, Lorianne, for sending this very cute picture along. Talk back at cbc.ca is where you can send yours. Minus 17 by tomorrow morning in Winnipeg. We're looking at periods of snow through the overnight hours, up to minus 15 by the afternoon. Winds stay fairly light through the day tomorrow, and even looking at temperatures staying around minus 16 by the evening hours, but the cloud cover sticks around through into the overnight hours before we start to see some clearing into Friday. So overnight tonight, looking at 10 to 15 centimeters through southwestern Manitoba. Brandon kind of on the edge of that 10 centimeters overnight, minus 22, minus 23 degrees tonight. Some light snow through Dauphin, minus 22, and then we get into that 2 to 4 centimeter range the further south and east you go in the province through the overnight hours tonight. Close to minus 30 again through northern Manitoba, looking at wind chill values close to the low minus 30s to start the day tomorrow, even approaching minus 40 through the early morning hours. But a much brighter day again through northern Manitoba, minus 22s by lunchtime in Flin Flon and the Pas, up to minus 21 tomorrow afternoon. In Thompson, the snow continues as we get through the morning hours at least, and then we'll start to see some clearing through southwestern Manitoba by lunchtime, minus 15 by lunch in Brandon. Looking at temperatures across southern Manitoba into northwestern Ontario, staying around minus 15.
All right, thanks, Riley.
You're welcome.
Well, if you have a young fan of the Theodore tugboat in the room, you might want to ask them to just skedaddle for a few moments. The tugboat was the namesake of a beloved children's TV show that aired on CBC between 1993 and 2001, but its life-size replica is in trouble. Theodore 2, as it's known, has taken on water and is partially submerged, stuck in mud, where it had been docked on Lake Ontario near St. Catharines. Now, it's not clear what happened, but the owners of the 65-foot replica say they're committed to refloating Theodore and presumably returning to promoting Canada's waterways and, of course, Great Lakes. Still ahead, Riley is back with a last check on our forecast. You're watching CBC Winnipeg News. Stay with us. On the beach, that's where at least one sea lion sleeps tonight. Oh, well, it's not unusual for migrating animals to make rest stops, but a napping sea lion was still an odd sight that greeted some beachgoers in Brazil. A portion of the beach was cordoned off to leave the visitor in peace. Wildlife experts say the animal appears to be healthy, and they believe a marine current may have pushed it far from its usual habitat at this time of year, which is closer to the Antarctic. The southern hemisphere is just days away from its official start of summer.
Here's a look at that snow as it makes its way into southwestern Manitoba. This is the region here in the southwest where we have that snowfall warning in place. We're expecting 10 to 15 centimeters by the time we get into the morning hours tomorrow. That's going to make highway travel, particularly on the Trans-Canada and the further east you go, closer to Winnipeg through the overnight hours into the early morning. So keep that in mind through the morning hours tomorrow. Your 7-day looks like this with a minus 15 tomorrow, periods of snow ending through the morning tomorrow in Winnipeg, minus 18 for Friday. Winter begins with a minus 9, a good chance of flurries into the morning for Saturday. And then we start to jump up closer to the freezing mark again. Cloudy with sunny breaks into Monday and Tuesday. And for Christmas on Wednesday, we are looking at mainly cloudy skies and a high of minus 2. It was a big win for the Winnipeg Jets last night in San Jose, but this trip comes with some very special companions making the trek.
Long before these players became household names around here, these women were making sure they got to the rink on time. Here's your Daily Lift.
We just got to take care of our business. Real happy to get the first win for the moms and the sisters here. To get that one, I know they're going to feeling pretty good about it. So we'll move into Anaheim and hopefully get 2.
That's Coach Scott Arneal after the game. The Jets' moms and sisters are with the team on the road in California. This is the second mom's trip in Jets history. The other was back in 2020.
It's a special time for the players and their parents, of course. The Jets do something similar with a father-son trip too. Next stop for the team and their moms is in Anaheim.
Hopefully they're the good luck charm that they needed.
Yeah, no kidding.
I love to see that.
Still doing fairly good in
You know what? These are the moms that had to get up early and be at the rink at those ungodly hours to get them there and make sure that they were well fed. So they deserve a little trip too.
Exactly.
But we hope that if you are taking a trip tonight out on those roads, you stay safe. We'll see you back here tomorrow.
See ya.